Krásný dobrý den, vítejte u dalšího videa. Today we are going to talk about the word order in Czech. And we're gonna focus specifically on the infamous second position. I'm going to show you several sentences that contain all these tiny little words that can be annoying for learners because they're never sure about where to put these words. So let's get started with this exciting topic. Jdeme na to. Dobrý den, vítejte na mém kanále Czech by Zuzka, kde vám pomocí angličtiny vysvětluju českou gramatiku. You've probably noticed that Czech has very flexible word order. It's said that the Czech language has relatively free word order, and the word relatively is the most important one in this sentence. Yes, it's more flexible than in English, for instance, but there are rules. And one of those rules that you should keep in mind is the second position. If you've been studying Czech for a while, you get an idea what it is, or at least you've heard about it. If you haven't heard about it, I am going to explain what it is. Let's take a look at this sentence. Šel jsem domů, I went home. Šel, I went, together with the auxiliary verb. Šel jsem, I went home. This is the rest of the sentence. What happens if I want to emphasize that I went home? I will put the word já in front of it. Já šel jsem domů is not correct. What happens is adding another word right here will change the word order. These two will switch positions. Já jsem šel domů. Here is šel, the main verb. Here is the auxiliary verb. Já jsem šel domů. Já jsem šel domů. These two sentences have exactly the same meaning, except here you emphasize I went home while you guys stayed here. Or you want to ask, why did I go home? Proč jsem šel domů? Proč? We put it right here. And because there is already another word, jsem will come right after, and šel, the main verb, will be here. The word order will actually be the same as the previous one because the structure is the same. There is something else in the first position. The first position cannot be occupied by words that are very short and are not stressed. For example, this verb, jsem, is an auxiliary verb. By itself, in this case, in this sentence, doesn't mean anything and there is no stress on it. Šel jsem domů. Šel jsem domů. Šel is stressed. Jsem is kind of like, get stuck to the following or the previous one. Šel jsem. This is one of the words that would be in the second position. Here is the second position. The first one, the second one. And it cannot be at the beginning. It cannot be in the first position. It's not simply strong enough. So in Czech there are certain components that cannot appear in the first position. These components have to be in the second position, like I said here. And those are, for example, the auxiliary verbs to be when we make past tense, or for the conditional form, the be and bych, etc. Budu for the future tense is a little bit tricky. I will mention that today also. It's not a second position word. Another example of a word that needs to be in the second position would be these reflexive pronouns, se and si, or ses, sis. Short pronouns that are not stressed, and a preposition with a pronoun. These sentences are still easy. There are not too many components, so it's not too complicated. All you need to remember that if there is something in the first position, já, proč, or včera večer, it doesn't have to be only one word. I said the word component. It's like a phrase that stays together. Včera večer means yesterday night. We cannot separate these. There are one unit, so they will be counted as the first position. The second position is reserved for the auxiliary verb, and then the main verb will be after. Včera večer jsem šel domů. Last night I went home. In this video I am not going to talk about possible ways of how to build a sentence because, for example, this sentence could also be said Šel jsem domů včera večer depends on what you want to emphasize. A subjective word order, which I am not going to include in this because it would be a little bit messy. So this is enough for now. When you look at these 4 sentences, which are very, very similar, the only thing is the beginning is different. You see jsem in the second position. Šel jsem, já jsem, proč jsem, včera večer jsem. Let's see more examples. Let's take a look at the sentence that has more components. Vrátila jsem se domů. I returned home. Vrátila jsem se. You see that we have se as an extra word because of vrátit se. I mentioned which are the words that need to be in the second position. We said auxiliary verb to be is one of them. Then also the reflexive se and se is one of them. We have it here too. So these two actually are in the second position. But, well, we have 2 second positions. How is that possible? They all want to be in the second position, but of course they cannot be there at the same time. So there is a hierarchy. This is the first position word. In this case, it's the main verb. What if we want to put something else? We want to start by už. I already returned home. Už jsem se vrátila domů. The first position. Or včera. Včera jsem se vrátila domů. Yesterday I returned home. The second position candidates are still here in the same position. Jsem and then se. Jsem se. What changed is the verb, the main verb switched. It freed this space for another component that can be in the first position. So our verb is here. And then the rest of the sentence. You can see the main verb going towards the end of the sentence, which is sometimes misleading when you have a long sentence and you're looking for the verb and it's not there. Oh, there it is at the very end. That's normal in Czech. Let's see another variation of this sentence. Já bych se vrátila domů. I would return home. We chose já to start the sentence with. What happens then we have bych. It's an auxiliary verb to be. In a way, it's just like jsem. So it has to be here first, then se. Já bych se vrátila. Here is the main verb. This is an important rule. First, if there is an auxiliary verb, it has a priority. Then se or si. Then a pronoun. There is no pronoun, so we don't have to deal with that. But let's deal with it now. So let's take a look at a quite nasty sentence. Ptala jsem se tě na to. Ptala jsem se tě na to. I asked you about it. It has all these tiny little words. And now you're gonna find out how to put them together. What's the order? Our verb is here. I'm gonna use green for it. Then we know that we have something in the middle, usually occupied by the second position words, and they're all here. Jsem, auxiliary verb to be, has the priority, jsem. Then se, or si, it's here. Then would be a pronoun, a short, unstressed pronoun. Tě is the perfect candidate for it. We take it, welcome. And what else? A pronoun with a preposition. Preposition, na to. We keep them together. Ptala jsem se tě na to. All these are second position words. But if we have more of them at the same time, then there is hierarchy. So what happens if we put another word that can be in the first position, like už? We love už. I've already asked you about it. What happens? Jsem, auxiliary verb to be first, then se, then tě, a short pronoun, then this pronoun with a preposition. Oh wait, it's exactly the same. Jsem se tě na to. Where is the verb? It comes last in this sentence. There's no other component, so the verb would be at the end, and it cannot be here because all these second position words have a priority, because there is a word that we decided to put in the first position. So remember, the main verb is very accommodating. It's selfless. If it's not at the beginning, it'll be usually at the end or towards the end. It clears the place for another word. How nice, right? This applies to anything that you put here instead. You can replace už by dneska. Dneska jsem se tě na to ptala. I asked you about it today. Or proč? Proč jsem se tě na to ptala? Why did I ask you about it? Asi jsem se tě na to ptala. I guess I asked you about it. It starts to make more sense once you see it like this in comparison and you start repeating these words. You can memorize it like a poem, and with time you will start realizing that this actually makes sense. Like lyrics of a song. I'm going to display this table here that shows you the hierarchy of the second position words. Feel free to take a screenshot or copy down. I'll show you a couple of sentences. We will take a closer look at them in this video. You can see the first position, either the main verb, if it's at the beginning, or words such as já, včera, už, etc. Then we have the auxiliary verb to be. Jsem, for example, for past tense, or bych, bychom, for conditional clause. Then se and si, or ses and sis. Then we have these short pronouns. Usually this would be the dative case. When we have more pronouns in different cases, direct and indirect object, first we would have the indirect object, dative, like my, ti, vám, and then we would have the direct object, the accusative case, mě, tě, to, but also něco, nic. Then, if we have a pronoun with a preposition, it would come after. Sometimes we can also put adverbials of place such as tam and tady. It depends. They are not exactly as second position words. Depends on the emphasis. But remember, they often do not appear at the very end of the sentence, but before the main verb. And then we have the rest of the sentence. It would be the main verb if we didn't use it at the beginning, or the rest of the sentence. Let's take a quick look at the auxiliary verb to be that we use for the future tense. Budu, budeš, bude, etc. I said that this one is not a second position word. And it's a little bit special. Budu, and actually the modal verbs like můžu, I can, umím, I'm able to, chci, I want, because they are followed by a verb in the infinitive form. This is different because this is a compound verb. And sometimes these two parts are together, sometimes they are not. When are they not together? When we start with budu or with an auxiliary verb, and if we have some words that are second position words, they have priority before the rest of the verb phrase. It's weird, but this is how it is. Now it's time for the second position words. Se is next, and then we have the preposition and the pronoun. And then is the rest of the phrase, the verb phrase, in the infinitive form. Budu se na vás těšit. You know that se actually belongs to těšit, right? Těšit se. But they're all separate because se has to be first in this case. So we have budu se těšit, but we also inserted the phrase with a preposition and a pronoun. So budu těšit se na vás is not correct because se has to be before. Budu se těšit na vás would emphasize I'll be looking forward to seeing you, but not you. That would be a subjective word order, and I'm not gonna talk about it today. Now, what happens if we put something in the first position? Ve čtvrtek, on Thursday. On Thursday, I'll be looking forward to seeing you. Ve čtvrtek is at the beginning. Now we cannot put budu. Budu is part of the verb, and now it decides it wants to go back to the end, to be reunited with its second part. But the second position words are still here in the same order. Se na vás, and now here we are, budu těšit. Ve čtvrtek se na vás budu těšit. So you see, the second position stays exactly the same. Těšit is at the end. Budu went and joined it. Let's see another example so you know how it works. Budu tam na tebe čekat. In this case, we're starting with the verb to be. Budu čekat at the beginning, at the end. And in the middle, we have some second position words. Remember I told you that tam doesn't like to be at the end. Usually here is one of those things. Remember, prepositional phrases are also often at the end, towards the end. So first we put tam and then na tebe. Now, zítra tam na tebe budu čekat. Tomorrow I'll be waiting for you there. We put zítra in the first position. The second position here is occupied by the same units, the same components. What happens with budu? It is reunited. In a way, it acts just like the main verb we saw in the previous sentences, the selfless verb. Clears the place for another word that would take the first position. Remember, these two are together. Budu čekat. So it is wrong to say zítra budu tam na tebe čekat. They're either far apart or they are together. And this also applies for modal verbs. If I said, I can wait for you there. If I said můžu tam na tebe čekat. It would be the same here. Zítra tam na tebe můžu čekat. There's a little bit more about the verb to be and the auxiliary verbs, but this is enough for now. Just so you're aware that this can happen with the word order. Let's continue. So you've noticed that the verb, the main verb, tends to be at the end or towards the end. For example, here is another sentence with budu. Budu vám o tom vyprávět. I'll be telling you about it. I'll be telling you a story about it. So the second position words are vám, an indirect object in dative. And then o tom, preposition and a pronoun. The verb is here, budu vyprávět. I'll be telling you about it. What if we put something at the beginning? In this case, we put a whole clause. Těším se až. I'm looking forward to when I'm gonna be telling you about it. In fact, this is our first position word, až. It can be connector. What happens? Second position words have to be here in the same order. Vám o tom. Okay, and then we have budu vyprávět. They came together. We can even insert something else. Těším se, až vám o tom zítra večer. Zítra večer budu vyprávět. I'm looking forward to when I'm gonna tell you about it tomorrow evening. It would be here. We would prefer to keep the verb at the end still. Or we could even make this part. Now there is room for adding more information. So we could say tomorrow evening at dinner u večeře. Těším se, až vám o tom zítra večer u večeře budu vyprávět. We got pretty far from a 3-word sentence. But I hope this is starting to make more sense. Practice makes perfect. Let's practice some more. Let's see 2 more sentences, or actually 4. Představím ti ji tam. I'll introduce her to you there. For example, you're bringing a friend to the wedding and your other friend is interested in meeting someone. So you say, jo, představím ti ji tam na svatbě. Představím, this is the verb. And now we have the second position words. Ti, indirect object, then the direct object. If we add something else in the first position, for example, potom, after, or then, I'll introduce you to her there, then. You see they stayed exactly in the same place as here. And what happened? The selfless verb is at the end. Remember, sometimes when you cannot find a verb in a long sentence, it might be at the end. Or, viděl jsem tě tady. I have seen you here. The verb here, viděl. And then the second position words. Jsem, and then tě, pronoun, and then tady. If we put a word such as už in the first position, the second position area is occupied by the same words here. And then we have the main verb. The selfless main verb is at the end. Here you can see how these words such as tam and tady would not end up at the end. They could if we needed to emphasize them. This is all. If you have troubles reading the handwriting or you would like to see the translation, I would like you to check my blog post, which contains all these examples and more. So please read it, share it. I'll be very happy if you spread the word. And now it's time for an exercise. In this exercise, you have to spot a mistake. Each of the sentences is wrong when it comes to the word order. You either have to move one word or two words, several words. Please take a look at it, pause the video so you have enough time, and then resume it when you're ready to check it. Hodně štěstí, držím palce, good luck and fingers crossed. Jdeme na to. Číslo 1. The correct word order is proč ses vrátil pozdě. First we have to put ses and then the verb. Číslo 2. Mirek se cítil lépe. First se, then the verb. Číslo 3. Potom ti to ukážu. Ti, first the dative, then the accusative case. Číslo 4. Ještě jste mi nic neřekli. Jste, the auxiliary verb, then the pronoun, in the dative case, the indirect object, and then nic, which is the accusative, the direct object. Číslo 5. Určitě bych se rozhodl jinak. Bych is also auxiliary verb to be. Then we use se. Číslo 6. Proč jste se mě na to nezeptali dřív? Jste se mě na to nezeptali dřív. Číslo 7. Radši bych se s tebou o tom nebavil. Here we have two phrases with prepositions. S tebou o tom. It's also correct to say radši bych se o tom s tebou nebavil. So it doesn't really matter actually. Číslo 8. Včera jsme se s nimi o tom hádali celou hodinu. The same case, we have s nimi and o tom, two prepositional phrases, and we could also say o tom s nimi hádali. That's all. Moc děkuju, že jste se dívali. Thanks so much for watching. I know that this might have been quite a bit of information, but I believe it was extremely useful. Let me know if you have any questions regarding this topic or if you would like me to elaborate. To je ode mě všechno. Mějte se krásně. Ve čtvrtek se na vás budu těšit. Ahoj!